Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
On the 7th of November 2006, a UFO sighting was reported at the Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Despite a number of airline employees and independent witnesses describing a disc-shaped craft hovering over the airport for some time before shooting through the clouds at high velocity, the Federal Aviation Administration declined to conduct an investigation.
Welcome back, listeners, to Aliens Explored with me, Stu Jackson.
And me, Neil Kelly.
And this week we are discussing the 2006 O'Hare Airport UFO incident. Now, this is one of those really interesting ones, isn't it, Neil?
It is, yeah. It's I think what's interesting about it is the suggestion of a cover-up.
Yes, absolutely. But it's one of those that gets me when people say, "Oh yeah, if there's no UFO, like if there's all these UFOs, how come people don't take? How can you don't hear about it happening? You know, in busy places?" Well, this is another one of those circumstances where it did happen in a busy place. It was seen by lots of people. There are photos of it.
Yeah.
But yes, so I mean, in terms of witnesses, you've got some really good quality witnesses. You've got 12 airline employees and a 13th person who saw this thing. It hung over an airport terminal for a period of time. And of course, the FAA just said, "Oh no, it never happened."
Well, that's interesting. It's I mean, the actual details, November the 7th, 2006. So this was just before people started carrying around smartphones and would routinely have a camera or a video capability with them. Just a few years before that. So I don't know if there is any footage of this. There doesn't. I couldn't find it.
There is photographic footage. Yes, it's not brilliant quality by today's standards, but it is pretty good.
So the report that a group of 12 airport employees were witnessing a metallic saucer-shaped craft hovering over gate C-17 at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. According to the Chicago Tribune's John Hilkovich, the disc was... Hilkovich, sorry, I'm doing him a disfavour. John Hilkovich. The disc was visible for approximately 5 minutes and was seen by close to a dozen United Airlines employees, ranging from pilots to supervisors, who heard chatter on the radio and raced out to view it. So they heard this kind of thing going on. Both the United Airlines and the Federal Aviation Administration initially denied that they had any information on the UFO sighting.
Until they had a Freedom of Information request. And then suddenly, oh yes, we do know about it.
Well, what happened was that the FAA ordered an internal review of air traffic communications tapes to comply with the request, which subsequently covered a call by the United supervisor to an FAA manager in the airport tower concerning UFO sighting. But I don't have the detail of what the content of that call was. I mean, it could simply have been the United supervisor calling the town saying there's an identified flying object over gate C-17, and the guy in the control tower saying, well, we can't see anything. either visually or on our radar. That could have been the content of the call. So
it could have been, but that would mean that the FAA were aware of it, or they were aware of it as a report. So why did they say, "Oh no, it doesn't exist"?
Well, because they've got conflicting information. They've got people on the ground saying we can see this disc hovering above the C-17, but you've got people in the control tower saying, well, we can see nothing from our vantage point, and there's nothing on the radar. So that could have been the content of the conversation, just saying, well, we can't see anything. That's it.
And that would be fair enough, but you wouldn't say we have no information about it. You'd say, yes, we had a report about it, however, it was not corroborated.
But I can easily see how they could say, well, no, we have no information about it, because the source of we would go to for our information source. We would go to the control tower. We would go to the FAA. And they would tell us what they saw on the radar or what was visible from the control tower. And what they said was nothing. They couldn't see anything to corroborate anecdotal evidence from nearer to the site. The people were saying, well, we can see something. And they're saying, well, no, we can't. We've got no information on it.
Okay, but also United Airlines, for whom these dozen people worked, also said that they had no information whatsoever, even though their own employees had reported it.
Yeah,
I mean that smacks of cover up to me.
there is that hint. There is that suggestion that something's been covering up. But I'm also thinking, well, they just said, well, we've got no information about it because the people who we'd normally ask, the control tower and the radar operators, saw nothing. If they don't see it, then it's nothing, regardless of what people on the ground think they see. I mean, these days, airports are far more alert to the possibility of UFOs because people fly drones these days. People didn't have drones in 2006. But we had was it the Gatwick Airport fiasco where there were reports of a drone and the police were looking for it, and then it turned out that the drone that was being sighted was their own drone that they were using to look for this unauthorized drone, and it was a complete mess up. But basically, drones weren't really a thing in 2006.
So looking at this photograph, which is it's to be fair, it's a bit grainy. It's a cloudy day, but it is absolutely clear from this that you are looking at a large, dark, disc-shaped craft. I mean, this literally looks like something out of Independence Day or V from when I was a kid. It really does look, it to all intents and purposes, like a huge flying saucer just hovering there. But we're given this cock and bull explanation without any investigation. So the FAA have said, okay, well, we're not going to bother investigating it because we think it was a weather phenomenon.
Well, basically because it didn't show up on the radar. And they couldn't see it.
What kind of answer is that then? Does that mean that stealth fighters and stealth bombers are a weather phenomenon then, that they don't exist?
Well, no, I mean, stealth fighters and stealth bombers are shaped in a certain way and painted with a certain material to give them a very, very small radar that they will reflect a very poor signal, if at all. Yeah. So they're not really invisible. They're certainly not invisible to the naked eye, but they are harder to track on radar.
Okay, and this looking at this photograph, you're looking at an object that is very dark in colour, so not dissimilar in colour to stealth craft, although it's impossible to tell a specific colour from the photo. But you're also looking at something with a very slim profile. So again, looking at something like that and knowing about stealth technology, wouldn't you say, well, look, least we've got to do is just run, all right, it's probably weather, they might say, but let's at least run an investigation. Refusing to run an investigation, I find really bizarre.
Again, I think it's because they couldn't see it. Witnesses described the object as completely silent, like a cloud, and somewhere between 6 to 24 feet, well, that's 1.8 metres to 7.3 metres in diameter. So would a disc 6 feet in diameter show up much on the radar? Was it actually inside their radar field? I mean, they got their radar scanners around the airport looking for things.
Yeah.
Was this thing actually down inside where they wouldn't see it? You don't see themselves on the radar, do they? They're looking outwards. Was it too close to be picked up on their radar? Too close and too small?
Well, exactly, but that's a perfectly reasonable question, and you know, we don't have an answer. But given that there is this possibility that it isn't just weather, you'd run an investigation, surely. You know, it's hovering over the gate of an airport. You'd investigate. You really would.
Would you? I mean, these people are very busy. I mean, and would the... So I wouldn't imagine the FAA would investigate it, but maybe, you know, there would be a branch of government that looks into these kinds of things. Would they necessarily make their findings public? An astronomer...
that's a very different thing. You know, yes. Had they done an investigation, are they just not releasing the information, which makes it, by definition, a cover-up?
Absolutely, yeah.
I find and declaring no investigation, and Mark Hammergren you were about to mention as well.
He's an astronomer who said the weather conditions on the day of the sighting were right for what he calls a hole punch cloud, an unusual weather phenomenon.
Well, that relates to the manner in which this
object disappeared. It flew upwards and punched a hole in the clouds as it went through.
Which means it must have been moving at some fair old rate to have done that. The cloud then closed in after itself. Hole punch cloud as a phenomenon, though, is reaching, to say the least. It's not something... It's very unusual for it to be round in the way that this particular one was reported to have been. No, that's just an incredibly far... But it also doesn't explain what was this dark grey disc-like thing hanging over the airport. It's there. There's photos of it.
There's photos,
and the FAA is saying it doesn't exist.
A video would be much more convincing.
It would, and that would be nice, but you go with what you've got.
So for the benefit of our listeners, what's called a hole punch cloud or a fall streak hole is a large gap that can appear in cumulonimbus or altocumulus clouds, and such holes are formed when the water temperature in the clouds is below freezing, but because the water is in a supercooled state, but it hasn't actually frozen. And apparently that can cause a sudden hole to open up in the clouds.
Yeah, it happens all the time in Chicago.
Well, I wouldn't know. I haven't been there.
No, neither have I. But no, I honestly think that the whole claiming to refuse to investigate is a bit of a smoking... and look, I can understand, you know, I'm a strong proponent for, you know, the truth coming out, but I can also understand why governments and government officials would not want the truth out because it is going to cause if you suddenly say, yeah, do you know what, aliens have been visiting us and they've been abducting people and doing experiments on that, and do you know what, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it, you could be next, but who knows. Yeah, you'd have mass panic.
But an unidentified flying object over an airport is a real cause for concern. I mean, a drone that you bought from your local Maplins flying over an airport is a cause for concern. A flock of birds is a cause for concern. So it depends what you call an investigation. If they said, well, there was a report of something hovering in the sky, and the radar operator says, well, there was nothing on the radar, and here's the recording of it. There's nothing there, and we couldn't see anything from the control tower. That's kind of the investigation stopped before it even started. We didn't see anything.
No, you talk to your witnesses. You get eyewitness reports.
But would you?
You do.
Would you do that if your radar is saying there was nothing there?
If you are doing a serious investigation, then yes.
But would you do a serious investigation if the radar is showing there's nothing there? You think, well, okay, it's a waste of time. It's not. We don't know what it was.
Got several independent witnesses and photographic evidence of a thing. All right, it didn't appear on radar, but it was very clearly there was something. Yes, you do an investigation, absolutely. I'm utterly convinced you would.
I'm not so sure. If it was, someone on the ground saw something, there have to be grounds for an investigation. And if your main source of information...
You don't think independent witnesses reporting something and a photograph of something is enough cause for an investigation?
I haven't seen the photos, so I don't know what can be seen. I mean, the photo is probably not time-stamped. It's probably difficult to see where that photo was taken. Can you see the control tower in the background and this thing hovering there? Can you see that it's clearly hovering above gate C-17, or is it just this thing in the sky?
You can see that it's hovering above gate C-16. You can see aircraft in the picture, so although it's not time-stamped, you can see the airplane's registry, so you can sort of extrapolate dates and times from that. You've got a vista of the ground, so you can get pretty much an exact location as well from it. Yeah, it's not a small thing.
But they've written it off as a weather phenomenon.
I mean, this is to be fair, this is not just me saying I think they'd do an investigation. The National Aviation Reporting Centre on Anomalous Phenomena, which is a bit of a mouthful, NARCAP as they're called, they did a report on the sighting and has called for a government inquiry. As they said in their report, any time an airborne object can hover for several minutes over a busy airport but not be registered on radar or seen visually from the control tower constitutes a potential threat to flight safety. Wouldn't that, from a formal organisation, be enough to... just say, it was weather. That's a lame excuse.
I mean, it was officially reported by at least one of the witnesses to this object, hovering in plain sight over one of the busiest airports in the world. Some witnesses were apparently upset that federal officials declined to further investigate the matter. Well, that again begs the question: have they actually declined to carry out any kind of investigation, or have they decided we're going to keep this under wraps?
And that's the big question, which, if it's under wraps, what is it that they've discovered that they feel the public can't handle?
Yeah.
That's the
It's a good question.
question.
So we've got potential cover-up or potentially screw-up. That they basically said, well, we didn't see anything worth investigating. But then when things hotted up, they just had to kind of go under wraps. I mean, that was the Freedom of Information request where they revealed that there had been a call by the United Supervisor to an FAA manager. But the FAA manager seems to have just said, well, I can't see anything, either visually or on radar. I don't know what you're looking at.
I mean, one element that we shouldn't forget when looking at cases like this is those people, like particular officials in control towers and quite often pilots and such like, when they do come forward and say, I have seen this UFO, I have seen this object that does not bear up to rational explanation, they're often met with such ridicule that it can be career-ending. You know, never taken seriously again. And for someone in a position like that, in the industry that they're in, you know, it's any pilot or air traffic controller or radar operator or anyone in that industry that does come forward has the greatest of respect from me, because they're incredibly brave coming forward.
And also
their
probably
careers might be destroyed by it.
But I can imagine it would only be those who are fairly assured of their position who would do so. If you're a fairly rookie pilot and you go up and you see something you can't explain, you think, well, I saw something, and people just laugh at me if I say I saw something up in the sky. They'll take the piss. But if an experienced pilot who's got hundreds of hours of flying time, who says, no, I saw something I've never seen before, or they're reporting it in real time and they're reporting its trajectory and whatever, and the people on the ground say, well, nothing on the radar, and they're saying, well, I can see this thing. You know, it's you've got to say it as you see it, haven't you? As it when you're flying.
You have, and pilots. I mean, conversely, pilots make some of the best witnesses because they're familiar with what phenomena they see. You know, what strange visual effects you might get from things and what have you. They're good at judging distances. They have to be by nature of what they do. Pilots do make some of the best, most credible witnesses.
Well, I think also they tend to be people with engineering degrees. They're very, very left brain logical people. They're not given to flights of fancy or imagination.
Exactly.
It's not like...
Exactly. Which coming back on this one really begs the question: why did the FAA not apparently take it more seriously than they did? So let's summarise on this one then. So I'm I'm absolutely convinced that a UFO visited O'Hare Airport in November the 7th, 2006. I am certain that it was an object not man-made. Again, the way it hovered silently and then shot off into the sky at a massive sudden acceleration like that. No, that's not a man-made object, and I think there's definitely a cover. Either the FAA were prevented from investigating it by a higher authority, or they've done a covert investigation that we're just not hearing about. How about yourself?
It's a mystery. I think for me, there are too many gaps in the information for me to say, it was definitely a UFO, but it's certainly, based on what the information I've been given, it seems quite inexplicable. Either as it couldn't be something man-made to not show up on the radar, to encroach on a busy airport. No responsible human being would do that. Just fly a craft into an airport, and the explanations of meteorological phenomena just don't seem to explain it sufficiently.
No. So there we go. The truth is out there. But what do you think, listeners? Is there a more mundane explanation? Are we barking up the wrong tree completely with all this? Are we just in fact nuts and wanting to see evidence? Or do you agree with us? Do you think we're absolutely on the money and that there is something going on that we're not hearing about? Or somewhere in between? Do tweet us. Let us know your thoughts on this. And yeah, if you can trace down the photo as well, do tweet that over so that Neil can see it. That'll be very, very interesting. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, and don't forget to join us next time when we will be discussing the very intriguing subject of alien implants. That's it from me. I'm Stu Jackson.
I'm Neil Kelly.
And we'll see you next time.
See you then.
Watch the skies. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Aliens Explored is a Figo Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by hooksounds.com and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Facebook and Twitter or by visiting aliensexplored.com.